Okay guys, well we have done the corner and the edge already. And so all we really have left to do is the center and then to finish everything up. So let's go ahead and get started on that. So I'm going to right click on here, say hide other parts, and then I am going to select, select these edges here and do a fillet on them. So maybe we can do 0.6. That looks pretty good. And then on top of that, I want to make it a variable fillet, and I want to make the top vertices a little bit more. So let's take these and make them maybe 9. Make that 9, 9, and last one 9. So that looks pretty good. And again, you could do this differently if you wanted to. I just sort of like, or I like how that looks or how that works. And then let's do another fillet on here. And on this one we're going to do sort of the opposite. Make the bottom fillet larger, and then you do a variable fillet. And, well actually, maybe it's the same. Let's see. Let's make this one 8. Oh, that's too much. How about 7? 7 millimeters and 7 millimeters. So yeah, I clicked on variable fillet and then I selected the vertices which I wanted, and then I changed them to be what I wanted them to be. And so I'll sort of show you what that's doing. You sort of remember how on the corner, how we made it go from smaller to bigger or whatever. So we're doing the same thing here, because when an edge is, or when a corner, when a corner is on this, it's going to be, or it's going to line up sort of like that. So you want the fillet to go that direction. Anyhow, it's kind of complicated. But if you look at a cube, you can sort of see how it helps to have this larger on the outside and then go smaller on the inside. Anyhow, let's add a couple more fillets just to soften this up, all these hard edges. So one on this one, and then a fillet for these edges, and less than 5 millimeters, maybe less than 1 millimeter even. We can select these edges here, and then on this one, there you go. That's nice. And why don't we make this a little bit smaller, just to make a little bit more room. So I'm going to use a move face and select this face. And let's reverse that direction. And let's try just 1 millimeter. Nope, it doesn't want to work. So that means I'll hit the check mark, and I'm going to move it before all these fillets. So right up there. And it works. So we can move back in time, scroll back up to here just to sort of see how that worked. So if we right click on this and we say roll to here, you can see that when I move the face there, it actually works, because there aren't as many fillets. Fillets sort of mess up move faces. So you usually try to go before you did all the fillets and then you move the faces. Yeah, that's nice. Looks pretty good. So let's hit the check mark. By the way, if you don't like this thing here, this rim here on the centers, because I know some people don't like that, what you can do is you can use replace face, and then click on that face because that's the face you want to replace, and then click on this face, and it'll basically chop that off. Then we can go on to another side, click replace face. I want to replace that face, replace it with this face, and then you keep on doing that, go all the way around, and it would get rid of those faces. But I like them, because I'm sort of a GTS type of guy. That's my main right now, and I just sort of like that cube. Not that I have that many nice cubes. I have like the GTS, and then I have a Mars S. So I have pretty limited experience with speed cubes. Anyhow, we still have a little bit to do. We need to make a cap and the internals of this center. So let's make a plane, and this time when I'm making the plane I have a face selected, so it's going to make an offset of that plane. And I want to make it 1 millimeter thick, and let's reverse that direction, and that looks good. So click the little check mark, and now I'm going to use the split feature to split this. So there's the cap, and then there's the rest of it. So I'm going to first off hide the cap, so hide part 3. I'm going to press P twice to remove the plane. And now we're going to start sketching on this plane here. So when you look at a centerpiece, usually what they have is they have room around here, because that's where the cap goes in, and then they have sort of like a little circle that goes around where the screw is, and then they have another little circle here for where the hole is for the screw, just to sort of stabilize it. So we're going to start off by making the rim around here for the cap, and so I'm going to use the offset tool, and what that does is it can convert geometry or whatever into a line, and then it makes an offset of it. So you can see here, sort of makes a little rim around there based off of these edges, and that looks good. So I'm going to make that 1 millimeter. That's a good thickness. And then let's add a circle. So center point circle. I'm going to press N to go normal to the plane. Click on the origin, and let's make that I think 8 millimeters is good for most screws. And then we can add another one and make it 10, just to have a 1 millimeter difference between these two. And another thing you could have done is not draw a distance, and then use the dimension tool, click on these two circles, drag it out, and make that 1 millimeter. You know what? We can make this a little bit larger. Why don't we do that? How about we make this inner one 9 millimeters? And because this one is set based off of the other one, it keeps the 1 millimeter radius here, or difference in radius. But yeah, that looks good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to extrude these two faces, and I'm going to make that a remove. And let's click on the front view just so we can look at the side of it, and drag this little arrow and just sort of drag it until it's up inside of the piece. That looks pretty good. Is that thick enough? We can make it a little bit farther down. Let's see, does 8 work? It's a little bit on the thin side, but I think that's good. Why don't we make it 7.75? I think that'll be good. And by the way, this will vary based off of the dimensions that you put in the original sketch, because if you, on the original sketch, made this line that goes down here a little bit lower, then you'll have more room for the springs and stuff. Anyhow, we're going to add one more thing on here. Of course, we need to make the hole for the screw, and we can make that hole most screws are like the standard size for screws is 3 millimeters, but the screws on most speed cubes is actually a little bit smaller than 3 millimeters, so I'm going to do 2.75 just to be safe, or to be a little bit under. And then I'm going to drag another circle, and I'm going to make the distance between these two circles, let's see, how about a little bit under 1, so 0.75 millimeters. Yeah, that looks good. And my 3D printer should be able to print that, so that works out. I mean, I think it can, yeah, it's 0.5 millimeters, so not really. Well, I have Simplify 3D, so I think it'll be okay. Anyhow, like Simplify 3D can like extrude like a really small amount of plastic to sort of make a rim like that. I guess we can just make it 1 millimeter to keep it safe. And so now that we have that, I'm going to extrude this outer ring up a little bit. You don't want it to be too much because then you can't screw the screw head in all the way and tension it. But you don't want it to be too small either, so let's make it 2.5. How does that look? And basically what this does is it makes a sort of a shaft around the screw, because if you don't have that shaft, then the center can sort of like wobble around like side to side. I don't know. Can't really show that with this. But the center can sort of wobble like that on the thing, which makes the cube unstable, and anyhow, it just isn't good. And so yeah, I'm gonna add this little thing here. Maybe we can make it 3 millimeters. Yeah, that looks good. And that'll still leave us plenty of room to put the spring in there. And so yeah, that seems good. So I'll hit the check mark, and then I'm going to do another extrude. I'm going to unhide the sketch, because it naturally hides the sketch when you're done with it. And I'm going to click on this face, and I'm going to say remove, and instead of blind, I'm going to say through all. And what that basically does is it just makes sure it goes all the way through the merge scope, or the parts which it's removing material from. So click the check mark, and then we can hide sketch 7, and we have the center's pretty much finished up. So there's a couple of more things which I'm going to do. Before I do that though, I just want to say, when you are making your center, it's good to get a caliper and to measure out all the different distances, like for how big you need to make this hole in here for your screw, and how deep you want it to be for the spring, and how much room you want there to be for tensioning. What I have here works pretty well with the screws that I work, but we all use different stuff, so anyhow, I'm going to add a chamfer on the inside here just to make it a little bit easier to print. So let's make this 2, does that work? 1 millimeter, 1.5 millimeters, yeah, that looks good. That just makes it a little bit easier to print, or a little bit less of an overhang over here, because I don't like to put some support material in here. I just sort of print it. And yeah, that looks pretty good. I guess we can add we can add a tiny bit of a fillet on here, but I don't want to put too much, because if you make too much of a fillet, then there's nothing for it to that really connects it to the print bed, and so the caps just break off. So let's make it 0.1 millimeters, just to sort of round it off. We can make that 0.15. If you want to do more, you can, but I just like to make sure there's as much contact as I can have. So yeah, that looks pretty good. And now I'm gonna hide this part, and I'm gonna show the cap. So now I'm gonna select the bottom face of the cap, press N to go normal to, and I'm gonna do another offset. And I'm gonna make it go 0.1 millimeters in. 0.1. Actually, I can just leave it here, and then type 0.1 in, or 1, sorry. 0.1 centimeters, 1 millimeter. And then we can do that again. Drag it in here and make it 2 millimeters. And I'm gonna press escape to get out of the offset tool, but I'm gonna drag this dimension tool over here just so these don't mess with each other. And then we can take this and extrude it. And we don't need that much. We can just drag this down a little bit. And we'll have just enough so it sticks in there, it stays in. So there's enough friction in between this part and the center. And we can actually show the center here, just to make sure it's not going too deep. I think 5 millimeters is a good distance. And let's hide this part again. Oh my, I forgot to change that. Let's make sure it's add and merge scope this part. Merge scope this part. There you go. And now something which is really important. I want to add a chamfer to this edge. We don't need a 5 millimeter chamfer. We can do 2 distances and make this one 1. Actually, let's make that 0.2, and let's make this one 1. Maybe a little bit more, maybe 2, and we can make this one 0.3. Yeah, that looks good. And what that'll do is it'll just make it a little bit easier for it to go in when you're putting your cap in. You can also do a move face onto this outer face here, like this part here, if you really want to. But personally, when I do that, it tends to make it too loose. So what I'll actually do is I'll print it like this, and then I'll just get sandpaper and I'll sort of sand those faces down a little bit, just a tiny bit. And then I'll put them in, and then I'll take them out and put them in a couple of times just to sort of break them in, and then it works pretty well. So yeah, let's show all the parts. And there's one last thing we really need to do with the center. We need to make those little holes to take the center out. So I'm going to do that on this face just because it's a little bit easier. You can also do it on this face here if you want to. You'll just have to like select, you'll have to find 3 points to select, and then make a plane, and then use that to extrude, and then you can use a circular pattern to pattern that around. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to use this face here, and then make a little center point circle. That seems good. Press escape to get out of that tool, and then I'm going to say extrude and remove, and I want my merge scope to be this part here. And let's make that, we can hide the cap. We can make that up to face. Up to face. Actually, let's just make that blind, and then we can make it 2 millimeters, or even 1 millimeter, because I think that's how thick we made it. So yeah, that should cut it through all the way. That sounds good. And does that look good? I think it looks good. And then we can go back here to the beginning, and let's show these curves that we have. I want this one, curve number 3. And let's do a circular pattern. We're going to be doing a feature pattern instead of a part pattern, which means we're patterning around an extrude or something instead of patterning a part around. So I want extrude 8 to be the feature. My axis of pattern is this axis here, and that'll just cut out all those little things here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make there 2, just to make it a little bit simpler. And Let's right click this, hide other parts. And just to keep this edge a little bit softer, I'm gonna fillet that. And probably 0.5 millimeters. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, that's pretty good. Let's turn off tangent propagation, because if you look here, it's filleting the inside there too. So if we unclick that, it'll just fillet those sides. And we can make it 1 millimeter. 1 millimeter. That looks good. Show all parts. And yeah, that's pretty much finished up. I guess we can add a fillet on here just to keep that looking nice. Let's make that 1 millimeter. 0.5 millimeters. That looks good. And that's the center. Yeah, trying to think if there's how many more videos I'm gonna have to make. I know I want to do one about finishing the puzzle up, or just doing finishing touches, seeing if there's anything I need to change. And I think I might have to do one more video that's explaining tolerances, because the way that I was taught tolerances is just it's incorrect. It's not different, it's just wrong. And so I'm gonna have to go over that again. But other than that, that's the centerpiece, and yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. Make sure to like and subscribe and do all that nice stuff, and hit that bell to see how I finish this off and prepare it for printing. So yeah, I'll see you guys next week.